The desperate call. High Chancellor Nix Valoran stood motionless before the massive holographic display, all six of his eyes fixed on the devastation unfolding across Valyrian space. His translucent skin had turned a pale blue, a physiological sign of extreme distress among his species. Around the circular command center, the surviving members of the Confederation Council watched in horrified silence as another Valyrian colony disappeared from the tactical grid. Tarsus IV has fallen, announced Strategic Director Orlan, her voice wavering despite decades of military discipline. Civilian casualties estimated at 8 million. The Cairn Collective is advancing toward the Centauri Belt. At current speeds, they'll reach our core worlds in less than 14 cycles. Nix's secondary hearts constricted painfully. In his 370 years of life, he had never witnessed such methodical extinction. The Cairn were not conquerors. They were exterminators, a hive-mind species that viewed all other sentient life as competition for resources. Our remaining fleet elements? Nix asked, though he already knew the answer. Dispersed or destroyed, High Chancellor, replied Defense Minister Vex, his dorsal spines drooping in defeat. The Andromean Alliance has declined our request for reinforcements. The Jutorian Empire claims they cannot spare ships from their own borders. They fear becoming the Cairn's next target, Science Counselor Zara observed quietly. Her feathered crest lay flat against her skull, another species' physiological response to extreme stress. A heavy silence descended upon the chamber as the implications became clear. The Valyrian Confederation, with its 11 trillion citizens spread across 73 worlds, stood alone against extinction. There is one option we haven't considered, said Archivist Tallon hesitantly. The ancient Quarian's crystalline exoskeleton dimmed as all eyes turned toward him. The humans. The suggestion hung in the chamber like a physical presence. Several council members instinctively recoiled. The Deathworlders, Minister Vex hissed, his scales bristling. You cannot be serious. They are technically our allies, Tallon continued, his voice strengthening with resolve. Their United Earth Navy is the most formidable fighting force in the Orion Arm. For good reason, interjected Trade Commissioner Jarrell. Their homeworld is a radiation-soaked nightmare with crushing gravity and atmospheric toxins. Everything on Earth evolved to kill everything else, including them. Which is precisely why we need them now, Tallon pressed. The humans don't just survive, they thrive on conflict. Their entire history is written in warfare. High Chancellor Nix raised his upper limbs for silence. The humans are indeed signatories to the Galactic Concord, though we've kept them at arm's length for generations. But Archivist Tallon is correct. They possess military capabilities we can only dream of. You've seen their soldiers, Deputy Minister Raylan whispered. Their durability, their aggression. They consider fracturing their own bones a minor inconvenience. They keep fighting when any rational species would surrender. Because they evolved on a world that tried to kill them every moment of every day, Zara added. Their culture, their psychology, their very biology is forged in constant struggle. Nix moved to the communications array, decision made. Better to face the devil we know than the extinction that approaches. Send the call. Request immediate human intervention. The transmission was brief, desperate. This is High Chancellor Nix Valoran of the Valyrian Confederation. The Cairn Collective has breached our outer defenses. 11 worlds lost. Millions dead. Request immediate military assistance under Article 7 of the Galactic Concord. All aid welcome, including human intervention. The response came with startling speed. Valyrian High Command, this is Admiral Helena Donovan, United Earth Navy. Your distress call is acknowledged. The Second Fleet is inbound. Estimated arrival, 18 hours. Hold position. Help is coming. Strategic Director Orlan's head tentacles writhed in disbelief. 18 hours? That's impossible. Even with their advanced slipspace technology, it would take days to cross that distance. It appears, Nix said quietly, that the humans have been advancing their technology faster than they've shared with the Galactic Council. Captain Alina Iron Frost stood on the bridge of the UEN Thunderstrike. watching the dimensional slip-space conduit twist reality before her vessel. At 42, Frost had earned her nickname not just for her unwavering resolve in combat, but for surviving 3 ship-to-ship engagements that should have killed her. Her short-cropped silver hair and the burn scars along her left jawline were testaments to those encounters. "Captain, dimensional transition in 60 seconds, reported Navigator Officer Way. "All battle groups report ready status." Behind the Thunderstrike, 500 of Earth's most advanced warships prepared to drop into normal space, an armada of destruction unmatched in the Orion Arm. Frost turned to her XO, Commander Marcus Blackwood, a towering man whose dark skin contrasted with the crisp white of his uniform. "Brief me again on the Valyrians, Marcus." Blackwood activated a holographic display. 6-limbed humanoids with translucent skin, dual cardiovascular systems, evolved on a low-gravity world with minimal solar radiation, 1/3 Earth standard. Technologically advanced but physiologically fragile by our standards. Their military doctrine emphasizes defensive positioning and long-range engagement. "And they've avoided direct contact with us for decades," Frost added. "Diplomatic relations only." "Can't blame them," offered Lieutenant Commander Hoshi from the tactical station. "The average Valyrian would snap like a twig on Earth. We're basically space orcs to them." A ripple of dark humor crossed the bridge. Humans had long been aware of their reputation among the galactic community. Deathworlders was technically a scientific classification for species that evolved on high-gravity, high-radiation planets with extreme biodiversity and environmental hazards. In practice, it had become shorthand for dangerous and unpredictable. "The Cairn?" Frost asked, bringing focus back to the mission. "Hive-mind insectoids," Blackwood replied. "Consume all biomass in their path, no concept of surrender or negotiation. Standard tactics involve overwhelming numbers and sacrifice of drone units. They've never encountered human forces directly." "Then they're in for a nasty surprise," Frost said, her expression hardening. "All stations, final combat preparations. Deploy Reaper teams on my mark after transition. Weapons systems to hot standby." "Captain," Communications Officer Ramirez interrupted. "Incoming transmission from Valyrian High Command." The main view screen shifted to show High Chancellor Nix, his 6 eyes widening at the sight of the human command crew. "Captain Frost," he began formally, though his translator couldn't quite mask the nervous harmonics in his voice. "The Valyrian Confederation extends its gratitude for your..." Prompt response. "High Chancellor," Frost nodded. "My fleet is prepared to engage the Cairn forces immediately upon arrival. We request your remaining military assets be pulled back to defend your core worlds." Nix's skin rippled with surprise. "Pulled back, but surely you'll need our support too." "With respect, Chancellor, your ships would be liabilities in the kind of engagement we're planning." Frost's tone was professional but unyielding. "Human combat doctrine differs significantly from Valyrian approaches." "May I ask what you intend?" Nix inquired cautiously. A cold smile touched Frost's lips. "We're going to hit them so hard and fast they won't have time to evolve a response." The dimensional slip alert sounded throughout the ship. "Transition in 5 seconds, Way announced. "Prepare yourselves, Chancellor," Frost said. "You're about to see why the galaxy calls us Deathworlders." The channel closed as reality twisted around the human fleet. The Thunderstrike led the armada into normal space, directly in the path of the advancing Cairn collective swarm. Thousands of insectoid ships filled the tactical display, a living cloud of destruction that had overwhelmed the Valyrian defenses. "All ships weapons free," Frost ordered calmly. "Release the Reapers, show them what happens when you pick a fight with humanity." Across 500 warships, bay doors opened to deploy specialized drop pods containing Earth's most elite soldiers, men and women who could function in environments that would kill most species instantly, who viewed pain as information rather than a limitation, who had been enhanced both genetically and cybernetically for maximum combat effectiveness. The Valyrians had called for help in their darkest hour. What they got instead was Judgment Day for their enemies, delivered by the species they had feared for generations. The Deathworlders had arrived. UNLESHING the storm. The Valyrian observation deck fell silent as the tactical hologram displayed the human fleet's first engagement with the Cairn Collective. High Chancellor Nyx and his council had expected conventional space warfare, coordinated formations, strategic positioning, and calculated exchanges of fire. What they witnessed instead defied every principle of galactic combat doctrine. "By the ancestor stars," whispered Defense Minister Vex, his scales shifting to a pale yellow of shock. They're charging directly into the swarm." The UEN Thunderstrike led Earth's armada on what appeared to be a suicidal trajectory, driving straight into the heart of the Cairn formation. No defensive screen, no attempt at flanking maneuvers, just raw, unrelenting aggression. "This is madness," Strategic Director Orlin murmured, her head tentacles coiling tightly against her skull. "The Cairn outnumber them nearly 3-1. Science Counselor Zara's analytical mind struggled to process the humans' apparent disregard for tactical orthodoxy. "Perhaps they don't understand the Cairn's capabilities. Should we warn?" Her words died as the first wave of human warships collided with the Cairn front. Instead of the expected devastation, the Cairn line fractured. Human vessels fired at point-blank range, weapons systems overcharged beyond safety parameters. When shields failed, they continued fighting. When engines were damaged, ships rammed themselves into larger Cairn vessels. "They fight like they have nothing to lose," Archivist Tallon observed, his crystalline form reflecting the chaos of battle. "Like every ship, every soldier is expendable." "Not expendable," corrected Nyx, understanding dawning in his 6 eyes. "They simply have different calculations of acceptable risk. Look there." The hologram zoomed in on a human destroyer, its hull breached in multiple sections. By Valyrian standards, the crew should have abandoned ship or surrendered. Instead, internal bulkheads sealed, and the vessel continued combat operations, even as sections of it vented atmosphere and bodies into space. "Send me the ground battle feeds," Nyx ordered, a growing sense of both awe and horror filling his primary heart. Commander Jackson Wade hit the surface of Tarsus IV at terminal velocity, his MK Roman 7 Heldiver's combat armor absorbing an impact that would have liquefied any Valyrian. Around him, 500 Reaper team specialists deployed in similar fashion. No dropships, no careful landing zones. Just humans in advanced combat suits dropping from orbit like living artillery shells. "Strike Team Alpha on deck," Wade reported, the battlefield unfolding before his enhanced vision. "Cairn concentration heavy, commencing Operation Thunderclap." The mission was straightforward: reclaim the Valyrian colony world of Tarsus IV. The method was pure human warfare, overwhelming violence applied with surgical precision. Wade stood 2 meters tall, his muscular frame further augmented by the powered armor that made him a walking tank. At 38, he had fought in 3 major conflicts and bore scars that would have killed most sentient species. A cybernetic eye replaced the one he'd lost in the Proxima campaign, giving him enhanced targeting capabilities. "All Reaper teams weapons free," he ordered, unslinging the heavy pulse rifle from his back. "Standard Deathworld protocols." Lieutenant Tanaka's voice came through the squad channel. "Sir, Valyrian survivors detected in the central habitat dome. Cairn drones converging." "Harper, Nguyen, Rodriguez with me," Wade commanded. "Everyone else, establish a perimeter and draw their attention." The 4-person fire team moved with synchronized precision, each soldier a veteran of Earth's most elite special forces. They didn't use cover the way conventional forces would. They became the assault, moving so fast and hitting so hard that defense became irrelevant. The first Cairn drones they encountered, 2-meter-tall insectoid creatures with razor-sharp mandibles and chitinous armor, fell in seconds, cut down by concentrated pulse fire. More swarmed from nearby structures, sensing the new threat. "Contact front," called Sergeant Harper, her heavy repeater cutting down 3 drones with a sustained burst. "At least 50 hostiles incoming." Wade activated his armor's combat enhancement system, flooding his bloodstream with a cocktail of stimulants and pain suppressors that would have killed any non-human species. His perception accelerated, the world slowing around him. "Push through the center," he ordered. "Create a corridor to the habitat dome." The humans moved like forces of nature, unstoppable and relentless. When ammunition ran low, they switched to backup weapons. When those were depleted, they used the serrated combat blades built into their armor. One Chiron drone managed to pierce Rodriguez's armor with its stinger, injecting neurotoxin that would have instantaneously paralyzed a Valyrian. The human soldier grimaced, injected herself with a universal antitoxin, and kept fighting, her movements barely hindered. Inside the habitat dome, 50 Valyrian civilians cowered in a makeshift barricade, expecting death at any moment. The structure's transparent ceiling offered a clear view of the battle raging outside, and the first glimpse any of them had ever had of humans in combat. The dome's entrance exploded inward as Wade physically crashed through it, carrying 2 Chiron drones that he dispatched with brutal efficiency. The rest of his team followed, securing the perimeter with mechanical precision. "Survivors located," Wade reported through his comm, "requesting immediate evac." The Valyrians stared in shock. These were not the careful, methodical rescuers they had expected. These were apex predators, moving with a controlled violence that made even their allies shrink back in instinctive fear. "We're here to get you out," Wade announced, his external speakers translating into the Valyrian language. His tone was matter-of-fact, neither gentle nor harsh, simply efficient. "Stay together. Do exactly as we say. We're leaving in 3 minutes." A young Valyrian stepped forward, her translucent skin pulsing with the blue glow of extreme stress. "The children cannot move quickly," she explained. "Many are injured." Wade nodded once, then opened his squad channel. "Tanaka, requisition a heavy transport. Harper, Nguyen, perimeter control. Rodriguez, medical assessment. Move." As his team executed their assignments, Wade's enhanced sensors detected a massive concentration of Chiron drones approaching from the east. Hundreds of them, responding to the threat the humans posed. "Command, this is Wade. Requesting fire support on my position. Danger close." "Acknowledged, Commander," came Captain Frost's voice from orbit. "Kinetic strike inbound, 15 seconds." Wade turned to the Valyrian who had spoken. "Cover the children's eyes," he advised. "This will be intense." Moments later, the Earth shook as tungsten rods traveling at orbital velocity struck the Chiron concentration. The kinetic energy alone vaporized everything within a 100-meter radius and created a shockwave that shattered the remaining dome panels. The Valyrians cried out in terror, but Wade's team didn't flinch. To them, this was standard operating procedure, the application of overwhelming force to eliminate threats with maximum efficiency. On the Valyrian command ship, High Chancellor Nix watched the tactical feeds with growing disbelief. In just 6 hours, the human forces had reclaimed 2 colony worlds and halted the Chiron advance on 3 fronts. Their casualties were substantial, nearly 30 ships destroyed and hundreds of soldiers lost, but they continued with undiminished ferocity. "They're not fighting according to any recognizable doctrine," Strategic Director Orlan noted, her professional assessment tinged with awe. "When conventional approaches fail, they simply adapt, instantly." Defense Minister Vex's scales had shifted to a deep green of troubled respect. "Did you see the human commander on Tarsus IV? He was wounded, bleeding from multiple lacerations, yet he continued coordinating the evacuation as if the injuries were trivial." "Because to them they are trivial," Archivist Tallon interjected. "Human physiology is remarkably redundant. Multiple organs, enhanced healing, incredible pain tolerance. What would incapacitate one of us merely inconveniences them." Nix's attention was drawn to a direct communication request from the Thunderstrike. Captain Frost's image appeared on the screen, her uniform now bearing evidence of combat, a smear of blood on her collar, carbon scoring on one shoulder. The bridge behind her was filled with activity, crew members moving with practiced urgency. "High Chancellor," Frost acknowledged, her expression composed despite the chaos around her. The Chiron fleet has been broken. Their command structure appears decentralized, but we've identified what seems to be their primary hive ship at coordinates I'm transmitting now. Captain, your forces have achieved more in 6 hours than our entire fleet managed in 2 cycles, Nix admitted. But your casualties. A hint of confusion crossed Frost's face. Casualties are within acceptable parameters, Chancellor. We're proceeding to Phase 2, decapitation strike against the hive ship. But you've already lost so many, Nix pressed, all 6 eyes blinking in distress. Frost's expression hardened slightly. With respect, Chancellor, this is why you called us. The Chiron don't understand negotiation or deterrence. They understand extinction, either theirs or yours. We're making sure it's theirs. The communication ended, leaving the Valyrian leadership in stunned silence. I'm beginning to understand, Nix said quietly, why the humans are classified as Deathworlders. It's not just their physiology or their technology. It's their mentality. Where we see insurmountable odds, they see challenges to overcome. Where we calculate preservation, they calculate acceptable losses. The price of salvation. The Chiron hive ship dominated the view screen, a grotesque amalgamation of organic and technological components stretching nearly 15 kilometers from end to end. Its surface writhed with movement as thousands of drone ships detached to form a protective screen around their central consciousness. On the bridge of the UEN Thunderstrike, Captain Alina Frost studied the tactical display with cold calculation. 12 hours of continuous combat had left her fleet bloodied but unbroken. 107 ships lost, thousands of personnel dead or wounded, statistics that would have broken the morale of most species. For humans, it merely fueled their resolve. All ships form on Thunderstrike, Frost ordered. Assault Pattern Omega, prepare the Nova package. Commander Blackwood's eyes widened slightly. Captain, Nova deployment hasn't been authorized outside of Sol's system. Check your updated orders, XO, Frost replied without taking her eyes off the tactical display. Full authorization came through an hour ago. The Chiron hive represents an existential threat to human expansion in this sector. Containment is no longer sufficient. Throughout the fleet, commanders received their updated mission parameters. There would be no attempt to board the hive ship, no effort to capture alien technology for study. This was extermination, pure and simple. Lieutenant Commander Hoshi's voice carried a rare note of concern. Captain, Valyrian observation vessels are still within the blast radius. Warn them once, Frost answered. If they don't withdraw, that's on them. Blackwood opened a channel to the Valyrian command ship. Valyrian High Command, this is UEN Thunderstrike. You are ordered to withdraw to minimum safe distance of 500,000 kilometers immediately. Acknowledge. High Chancellor Nix's voice came through, tinged with confusion. Commander, our scientists are still collecting data on Chiron biology. Surely now that their fleet is scattered, we can. This is not a negotiation, Chancellor, Frost cut in. Withdraw now or be destroyed along with the target. You have 5 minutes. The channel closed, leaving no room for discussion. Begin final approach, Frost commanded. All ships maintain formation integrity, deploy countermeasures against drone intercepts. The human fleet accelerated toward the hive ship, their formation tightening to provide overlapping fields of fire. Ahead, the Chiron drones swarmed like angry insects, tens of thousands of individual craft moving with hive-mind coordination. Drone ships on intercept, announced Tactical Officer Chen. Impact in 30 seconds. All ships point defense protocols, Frost ordered calmly. Create a corridor for the payload delivery team. The space between the human fleet and the hive ship erupted in a storm of energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, and nuclear-tipped missiles. Chiron drones died by the thousands, their debris creating a hazardous field that both fleets now navigated. Payload team reports ready, Captain, Blackwood said. Frost nodded once. Execute. From the center of the human formation, 3 specialized corvettes broke away, accelerating to maximum speed. These were the delivery vehicles, each carrying a fraction of the Nova package, designed to penetrate the hive ship's outer hull at different points. Valyrian vessels withdrawing, Captain, Hoshi reported. They've cleared minimum safe distance. Good, Frost replied. Maintain suppression fire, give the delivery team every advantage. On the main view screen, the first delivery corvette reached the hive ship, its reinforced prow smashing through the organic hull. The second and third followed moments later, penetrating at calculated points along the massive structure's spine. Delivery complete, Blackwood announced. Detonation in 60 seconds. All ships begin withdrawal to safe distance. The human fleet executed a synchronized retreat, engines straining as they raced to escape the coming devastation. Behind them, the Chiron drones fell into disarray, their coordinated movements suddenly chaotic as the hive mind sensed the threat within its central corpus. Detonation in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The view screen automatically darkened as the Nova package detonated, 3 precisely coordinated antimatter charges igniting the atomic bonds of matter itself. For a brief, terrible moment, a new sun bloomed in space, consuming the hive ship and its drone fleet in a sphere of pure annihilation. When the energy wave dissipated, nothing remained of the 15-kilometer hive ship but scattered atomic particles and radiation. Target eliminated, Chen reported formally. No Chiron signatures detected within sensor range. Frost exhaled slowly, allowing herself the first moment of relaxation in nearly 20 hours. Stand down from combat stations. Begin damage assessment and casualty reports. She turned to Blackwood. Open a channel to High Chancellor Nix. I believe we need to discuss the terms of our continued presence in Valyrian space. The Valyrian High Council chamber had been designed to inspire awe, soaring crystalline arches, gravity-defying sculptures, and a panoramic view of their capital world's twin moons. Today, it felt confining, almost claustrophobic, as Captain Alina Frost stood before the assembled council members. She remained in her combat uniform, still bearing the marks of battle. No ceremonial dress, no diplomatic niceties. This was not a traditional diplomatic exchange, and Frost made no pretense otherwise. The Chiron Collective has been eliminated from Valyrian space, she stated without preamble. Their hive ship was destroyed, and all drone elements have been neutralized. My fleet is currently securing your outer colonies and establishing defensive perimeters. High Chancellor Nix stepped forward, his secondary limbs extended in the Valyrian gesture of gratitude. Captain Frost, the Confederation owes humanity a debt we can never fully repay. Your intervention saved our species from extinction. Yes, Frost acknowledged simply, it did. There was an uncomfortable pause as the Valyrians waited for the expected diplomatic response, perhaps a gracious acknowledgement or assurances of continued friendship. None came. We had anticipated, Defense Minister Vex ventured cautiously, that once the immediate threat was eliminated, your fleet would begin withdrawal procedures, perhaps leaving a small contingent for. My fleet isn't leaving, Minister, Frost interrupted. The United Earth Navy is establishing a permanent military outpost in the Tarsus system, with additional forward operating bases throughout Valyrian space. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Science Counselor Zara's feathered crest stood fully erect in alarm. Captain, while we appreciate your assistance, we cannot allow foreign military installations within Confederation territory without proper diplomatic. This isn't a request, Counselor, Frost cut in, her voice level but unyielding. The UEN Security Council has designated this sector as a strategic defense zone following the Chiron incursion. The paperwork has already been filed with the Galactic Concord under Article 9, Protection Rights. Protection rights? Exclaimed Strategic Director Orlan, her head tentacles writhing in agitation. That statute hasn't been invoked in over 3 centuries. It was designed for primitive pre-spaceflight civilizations, not established members of the Galactic Concord. Frost's expression remained impassive. Article 9 states that any signatory power may claim protection rights over territories unable to defend themselves against existential threats. Your own distress call established that the Valyrian Confederation could not repel the Cairn invasion without external intervention. High Chancellor Nyx's 6 eyes blinked rapidly in distress. Captain, surely there's room for negotiation, perhaps a mutual defense treaty, or— My orders are clear, Chancellor, Frost replied. Earth has determined that this sector requires permanent human presence to ensure stability. The Cairn may be defeated, but they're not the only threat in the galaxy. And if we refuse? Defense Minister Vex challenged, his scales darkening to the red of confrontation. A cold smile touched Frost's lips. Minister, you called Deathworlders to save you. You've seen what we can do to our enemies. Do you really want to test what would happen if you became one? The implied threat hung in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. Archivist Talon's crystalline form dimmed in resignation. The humans aren't just establishing a military presence, he observed quietly. They're expanding their sphere of influence, using our vulnerability as a foothold. A mutually beneficial arrangement, Frost corrected. You receive our protection. We secure a strategic position and access to resources in this sector. The Galactic Concord recognizes the legitimacy of such arrangements. And the rest of the galaxy will recognize that humanity is no longer content to remain isolated in their corner of space, Nyx stated, realization dawning in his ancient eyes. This was never just about saving us, was it? This was opportunity. Frost regarded the High Chancellor with newfound respect. Every species acts in its own interest, Chancellor. Humans are no different. We answered your call when no one else would. Now we're ensuring that our investment wasn't wasted. 3 months later, Commander Jackson Wade stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed UEN outpost Vigilant, watching as Valyrian and human workers collaborated on expanding the facility. The massive space station orbited Tarsus IV, its weapons systems constantly scanning for potential threats. Lieutenant Tanaka joined him, offering a data tablet. Latest reports from the frontier stations, sir. No sign of Cairn activity in any monitored sector. Wade nodded. And our other monitoring. 17 species have filed formal protests with the Galactic Concord regarding our presence in Valyrian space, Tanaka reported. The Andromean Alliance has moved additional ships to their borders. The Jutorian Empire has reached out through back channels, suggesting a non-aggression pact.